from the Digital Media Center on the campus of Southern Oregon University in Ashland, Oregon. This is Ramping Up Your English, an educational program for intermediate level English language learners. Here's your host for Ramping Up Your English, John Letts.
Welcome to Ramping Up Your English. Ramping Up Your English is an instructional support program for intermediate level English learners. If you've already passed the beginning stages of learning English and you want to reach higher levels of English proficiency, this program is designed to meet your needs and get you closer to your goal. This is a bonus episode for viewers interested in our current content unit on Native Americans. It's my great pleasure to welcome storyteller Thomas Doty to episode B16 of Ramping Up Your English. Thomas Doty has blessed thousands of children and adults with stories that have been passed down through generations of Native Americans. And he's become knowledgeable about Native Americans who have lived in our region in Southern Oregon and who still call this place home. Tom, it's an honor to have you on the program.
An honor to be here.
Now, Ramping Up Your English is produced in Southern Oregon, and it's in this region, Southern Oregon and Northern California, where Tom has found his roots that go back thousands of years. I am so glad to have you on the program, Tom.
Thank you.
Now, I want to start with something that you discovered years ago. You were taken to a very special place, I understand, that helped you even in a more deeper way connect with your past. Can you tell us about Coyote's Paw?
Coyote's Paw, yes. Well, I have a pretty colorful family history, and which goes back to the Mayflower on the Irish side and 1850s for the Irish in the Rogue Valley. But the native side of my history, my family history, has always been a bit of a mystery. My grandma Maud was our family storyteller, and she had native roots, and most of those native roots came from the Missouri area, even though she was telling stories from the local area. So one day I was down in Wairika, and I was talking to C. George, Caraway George, a Shasta elder. We were talking about stories, and he says, so what are you doing the rest of the day? And I said, well, not much, and so I think we should go up the Klamath River and look at some Indian sites and talk more about stories. And I said, well, okay. So we hop into his bright purple dune buggy and we head up the river. And he's pointing out various village sites, and we're talking about stories. And we get up to the old village of Coyote's Paw, which is an amazing place. There's so much still intact there. You can walk into this site and really get a sense of the layout of an old-time village. And we're walking around there, and I'm looking at things, looking at the cairns that are the graves, looking at the rain rock, looking at the depressions where the houses were, looking at the old Indian trail, all of these things, and I'm thinking, whoa, this is a pretty vulnerable site, you know, for people who were raiding the villages at that point for artifacts and such. And I was wondering, why is he telling me all this stuff? Why is he showing me this place? You know, here I am mostly Irish, not even sure about my native heritage. And I finally asked him, I said, so why are you bringing me here? And he says, oh, we have a tribal memory still of your family living in this village. I'm just bringing you home. And at that point, I started digging a little bit deeper into the family archives and the genealogy to find those connections that are still a little bit tenuous, but definitely Coyote's Paw feels like home to me every time I visit there. And that was probably 30 plus years ago, and I go back to the village every couple of months to spend some time there.
Wow. So you really made a connection there with that.
Yes, I did. It was a very deep connection.
Now, what you've devoted your life to is storytelling. Mm-hmm. And this, as I learned in both talking with you before the program and visiting your website, is that you really do a lot of research to back up that whole process.
Yeah, when I started out as a storyteller in 1981, there were no classes in storytelling, no workshops. You can go to a college now and get a degree in storytelling. But back then that wasn't there. So I did what storytellers have always done. I went and I sought out the elders, and I sat for hours and hours at a time with a number of very distinguished elders, and then I would run home and scribble into my notebooks everything I could remember. And then, of course, Grandma Maud had told us a lot of stories as well. And in the latter part of the 1800s, a lot of the stories were beginning to get written down by anthropologists and collected. And so I also went to that literature and read a lot of those publications, old journals and such. And so it's a combination of talking to people, listening, also spending time in the place, those wild, wonderful places that the stories come from, because the landscape, especially sacred sites, they have a language. And if you spend enough time there, throw away the notebooks for the moment, just get really quiet and listen, you'll hear the language, the story of that place, and so you'll have a deep, deep connection to the place that you just can't get out of books.
And what we hope to do is share a lot of that, what you've learned, so that people can know about the Native Americans that live in our region. And your entry seems to be through the mythology and the storytelling. So I remember you mentioning that in the worldview of the Native Americans who lived in this place, that everything was alive. And you know, we think of, oh yeah, the animals are alive, and yeah, if you want to call them people, you can call them people. But they're talking about the rocks being alive. And I think of this image that we'll see real soon where, as you describe it on your website, the rock is telling the story.
Well, in our old-time mythology and right up until into our current view of the world, everyone is people. Everyone is people. There are the animal people, the four-leggeds. There are the salmon people who are the swimmers. There are the bird people. There are the rock people. They're the oldest people, and they are the first storytellers. And you can still find their stories carved and painted on the rocks. All of these different people, and the ground people, and the grass people who are the dancers, you know, and the tree people, the one-leggeds, right? And of course, there are the human people as well. And all of these people are equal in importance to make our world a healthy place. There is no hierarchy that the human people are the most important and the rocks, being not alive, are the least important. Everybody is alive. Everybody has a spirit. This table is alive because somebody made this table, and the energy of that table still exists here with us. And so that's a very critical concept to understand when understanding Native people. And to us Native people, it's not a concept at all, of course, it's a way of life.
It occurs to me in this way, the rock's alive and so is the artist. So what we're seeing is a collaboration.
Sure. And when you look at this picture that's up currently behind us here, it's a storytelling scene. And the storyteller is gesturing there. And notice that his audience are animal people. There's like this point in the story that the audience becomes so engrossed, connected to the story, that they become participants in the story itself and become the characters of the story. There's that incredible connection between stories and the people who listen to them and the people who tell them.
And it seems like animals are often part of the mythology, maybe even say always a part of the mythology. And one animal that we have in our region in somewhat abundance is bears. And we see, this is an example of, like you said, it would be a bear person, not just an animal as something separate from us. So we look at this, we'll soon see an artist rendition of a bear. And I think it's great in that it puts together the animal form of the bear, but it also has the stars in it, it seems like there's some kind of connection there.
Yeah, bear is very important. We often refer to him as Great Bear in the Sky. And bear in our mythology is in control of the seasons. We see bear as the Big Dipper constellation. Also means, Ursa Major, Big Bear, right?
Yeah.
And that constellation circles counterclockwise to the night around the North Star. Well, that's Bear dancing around the fire in his lodge. And as he's dancing around that fire, he is sending the seasons circling through the year. So that when we do our dances down here on the earth, our circle dances, we always dance counterclockwise here locally to honor the great bear in the sky and to help keep the seasons moving through the year. And you're mentioning about there always being animal people, in the stories. There's a reason for that. The animals in the stories not only have certain characteristics of the animals themselves. So we all, coyote is the obvious one,
Yeah.
and bear has kind of this slow moving, kind of lumbering kind of way of moving in the stories, even though he's kind of slow speaking. He's very smart and he can move very fast when he wants to. All of the characteristics, the animal characteristics, are in the characters and the myths, but there's also human characteristics in each of these animals, and that's how we can relate to them as human beings, in that they are also out there doing stuff that people do, that human people do as well.
Yeah. Now, one of the things in our region, not long ago, a new casino opened up in Wairika, and it's called the Rain Rock. And I had no idea what a rain rock was,
Right.
but actually that is very important, the Rain Rock.
The rain rocks are, and they're also connected to the bear mythology. The rain rocks are rocks scattered around the region, both Southern Oregon, Northern California. They often have cupules, or these holes that are in them. And the bear clan of each of the local tribes or villages were basically in charge of the rain rocks, and the rain rocks were used to control weather. So you would cover up the rock to stop the rain. You would uncover it to bring rain. There's also things about wind. They're fairly complicated sorts of things, but almost all of the rain rocks have bear paws carved on them, because the weather and the seasonal changes are so closely associated with Great Bear in the sky.
And then you also have this rock just called the Bear Rock, that's apparently close to or on one of the Table Rocks?
Yeah, Lower Table Rock. It's near the summit of, at one point as you go up the BLM trail up Lower Table Rock, there's a point toward the top that it's joined by the old time Indian trail, and they're actually the same trail. And so as you come up to the summit of the rock, you see this bear rock in the middle of the trail. And so as the seasons would change through the year, we would climb up that rock, up Lower Table Rock, and we would pass the bear rock, and we'd pat Bear on his nose lightly, not to wake him up, if it was that time of year, and thank him for the seasons. And then a ceremony would be done on top, a bear dance, always circling counterclockwise. And so the bear rock is a physical representation there on Lower Table Rock in the center of our universe, that represents the bear mythology and the circling of the seasons.
And among the Takelma, as with most groups, I suppose, ceremony is very important.
Yes, ceremonies and rituals very closely associated with the myths. Rituals are you can think of them as myths acted out, and we have several, that happen. Probably our most famous, and the ceremony that we still do and has been going on for thousands of years, is the salmon ceremony. It takes place along the Rogue River and is all about honoring the salmon people, and is all about reciprocity, giving back to those who have given us so much. I noticed that was kind of what you were thinking of, was the salmon. Ah, there we are.
There we are, yes, the salmon.
And back in the old time, back in the myths, we made a deal with the salmon people. They lived in old time villages at the bottom of the river, and these wonderful villages. And our deal was this. We said, you give us food, and we will ensure that your species not only survives, but thrives. And that gave way to creating the salmon ceremony, which is based on reciprocity, giving back to those who have given us so much. And so a fairly elaborate ceremony established by the Dragonfly brothers and another old-time myth at Tillameek, which is there along the Rogue River outside of Gold Hill. That became the home there at the falls of the sacred salmon ceremony. And it was the only ceremony for a very long time for hundreds of miles around. So people came up from California, they came over from the Klamath Basin, they came up from the coast, down from the Willamette Valley. As Molly Orton at Takelma once described it, this was big time, like 4th of July. And she said, this was the time salmon have sore backs. And what she's referring to is the Takelma moon name for that time of the spring salmon run, which means when the salmon have sore backs. And of course, by the time they reach that middle stretch of the river there, they're pretty battered. Their backs are pretty sore, you know.
So salmon was important for a lot of people.
Yes, yes. And the salmon ceremony was really important to each year renew that promise we made with the salmon people, to renew that promise, to honor them. The first salmon taken from the river during that ceremony was gutted, put on a drying rack, and then for the length of time it took for that salmon to dry, no more salmon were taken from the river. This might take a few days. And this allowed thousands of salmon to swim past the fishermen, past the village, leap the falls, go upriver to spawn to ensure there would always be salmon. And while that was going on, of course, we're returning the bones and the skin of the first salmon to the bottom of the river, back to the village of the salmon people to honor them. We're telling stories about the salmon. We're dancing, we're singing to honor the salmon people. And then once that first salmon is dry, then we go fishing. And at the end, we have a great feast of salmon and more stories and more songs and more dancing to honor the salmon.
So there's a lot more. I mean, you know, a lot of people have gone salmon fishing, but there's a whole lot more to that when you look at that, that whole dynamic.
Yeah.
Now, in a practical sense, salmon was an important food source for the Takelma. What other types of foods did they?
Well, traditionally, back in the old times, salmon, I mean, the two biggest were probably salmon and acorns. Acorns were picked, they were stored for a while, they were eventually pounded into acorn flour. They were leached to get the tannic acids out of the acorns, get rid of that bitter taste. And then you could make bread, you could mix them into a kind of a soup, you could add meat, you could add whatever, and kind of acorn mush, you know, and it's very nutritious. And along with what are there other animals like deer or the salmon, but also other plants like the camas, yampas, all of these different plants. The women were masters of knowing the wisdom of where to find the food, when to find it, and how it was prepared. And that wisdom passed along through a very matriarchal culture that the Takelmas were for thousands of years, is still passed along today. And so it's the women who carry that knowledge and the stories associated with that knowledge that ensured that there would always be plenty of food for the native people.
Was travel involved in?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, lots of travel. You know, we refer to our villages like Coyote Spa. It's a winter village. You know, by spring, the village is virtually abandoned. In some cases, the houses are kind of taken apart, so it kind of dries out. Once you have 2 or 3 families living in a house all winter, it begins to kind of smell like a middle school locker room, you know? And so it's dried out. And the people are off to the salmon fishing places, the camas gathering places, or they're going up Huckleberry Mountain to spend several months up there. Another big gathering, kind of like the salmon ceremony, where people came from all over up Huckleberry Mountain to pick the huckleberries. And by the fall, you know, laden with, you know, dried salmon and dried berries and all kinds of different food, the people would return to the winter villages and store away the food, and that would begin the traditional storytelling season that would take us through the winter. Wow.
And in our next episode, we're going to go a little bit more in depth of the storytelling itself. But part of this is the landscape that we look out and we see Mount McLaughlin, almost a classic, you know, pyramid up there.
Yeah.
But all of these places had special aspects about them.
Oh yeah, Mount McLaughlin, for instance, is Walamka in our Takelma language. That's kind of the short version. The longer version is, I'd have to look it up, but it literally means the floating mountain. And a long time ago, the mountain was floating around until it found a place to live, and then it settled down onto the crest of the Cascade Mountains and became the home of Acorn Woman, one of the most powerful of the medicine women in our Takelma mythology. And every spring, she comes down the mountain, she spreads her swelling skin over the oak trees to grow the acorns. And in the fall, she goes back to live on her mountain, and her white hair is the shape of the snow on the mountain. So each of the mountains are essentially 5 mountains. 5 is our sacred number that kind of circle the Takelma homeland, each associated with powerful medicine people that were there to kind of keep an eye on the health of the people. The similar Hulkas, the upper class medicine people like Acorn Woman or Rock Old Woman up by Sexton. And so our homeland is encircled by the power and the healing power of these powerful medicine women to keep our place healthy. And Mount McLaughlin is one of those mountains.
Oh, wow. And then you had mentioned when they go off on what some people call their seasonal rounds, gathering food and such, someone coming into the winter village might think, well, no one lives here.
Right.
But let's take a look at this house. And I understand this is a reconstruction in honor of Grandma Aggie.
Right. This is a traditional Takelma plank house, a winter house. It was made in 2000, made without any modern tools. It was done in a traditional way, and it was done to honor Agnes Baker Pilgrim, my good friend and our Takelma elder who just turned 95 years old this last September. And it's a very typical Takelma plank house with it's sort of half in the ground, it's slightly subterranean. There's a fire pit inside. There are little ledges around inside for sleeping, for sitting on, and a little hole in the roof for the smoke to go out. You never had to have a very big fire because these plank houses are very snug, being partway in the ground, and the door. Takelmas had doors in their houses. Some of the tribes a little further south, you entered through the smoke hole, and it would be so far down into the ground that the house itself was even covered with earth, and there would be flowers growing out of it. The only sense you would know that there was a house there was there's a little bit of smoke coming up, you know. But the house is the center of the family, the heart of the family, where the village is the heart of the culture. And every Takelma myth begins with the words Willi Yo Wo, which means there was a house, or a house there was. So each of the stories begins at that important center of the house. And if you were to leave the house, like in the summer, you would stand a pestle up in the mortar straight up and down, or maybe hang some beads from the top. And if the pestle fell, and that meant you were coming back to this house. And if the pestle ever fell over or the beads broke, that means you've had some bad luck and you're dead. And the house is now available.
Yeah. For rent.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
yeah. That's amazing. And I know in the book Indian Tales, they talk about the other kind of pit house that you were talking about.
Jaime D'Angulo's book.
And in fact, they call those people the Pit River Indians, which had to do with that. Well, a vision manifests itself here of a lot of balance, it seems. And when you look at the thousands of years that these people lived here, I think that probably tells us something about how sustainable their life was.
And still live here. You know, we talk about a lot of the traditional things kind of in the past tense, and I guess that's okay for things we don't do anymore. But one thing that we try not to do is to talk about Native people in the past tense, because we are still here. And here in the valley, there are thousands of Native people now from probably 40 different tribes, and a small part of those are perhaps Takelma or Shasta in the valley here. But we have a word in our Takelma language that kind of dramatizes this, and it's Emetikliak. And it's also the name of the sculpture in downtown Ashland. It means we are here, But it means even more than that. It means we are here, we are living in this place, we are breathing right in front of you. So we are still here. Right?
So the same people that found this balance, that found this sustainability, are living among us. I can't help but think we could learn something.
Yes.
We could definitely learn something.
And I think we're seeing more and more of that happen. We're seeing more of the younger people interested in what the elders have to say. For many years, the elders didn't talk much. They said, what's the use? It's obvious the younger people, they'd rather go to the cities, they're not interested in the culture. But now there's much more interest and the elders are talking, and so we're seeing much more of our traditional culture come back, our languages come back as well.
So there's so much more to learn about Native Americans of Southern Oregon and Northern California. This interview will continue to episode B17. To learn more about Thomas Doty, visit his website at dotycoyote.com. You can contact me at letscreatepro@gmail.com. Visit my website, letscreate.org, for all episodes of Ramping Up Your English. You can live stream from RVTV Voices by visiting rvtv.sou.edu. And Ramping Up Your English can be seen on RVTV on Channel 15 in the Ashland Home Network and Channel 182 in the rest of Southern Oregon on Spectrum's Charter Cable. Well, we've seen on RVTV, we are seen on Mondays at 8 a.m. and Thursdays at 7 p.m. I want to thank my director, Denise Ross, my talented and dedicated crew, and I want to thank you, our viewers. All of you helped make this program an award winner. Join me next time for Ramping Up Your English. I'm John Letts.
You've been watching Ramping Up Your English, a support program for intermediate level English language learners. Learn more. Visit our website at letscreate.org. You can also watch or download today's program at archive.org/details/roadtv. Join us next time on RVTV Voices for Ramping Up Your English.